Okay, let's just rip the Band-Aid off. I lost my period for 10 years. And in this video, I'm going to share my journey, the mistakes I made along the way, and the lessons that I've learned. If you don't know who I am, my name is Julia Glanz. I'm a registered dietitian with a master's degree in nutritional science and a certified strength and conditioning specialist. This is one of the most vulnerable things I have ever shared, and I have felt so much shame to even say this publicly. And I think I felt so much shame because I was embarrassed. I didn't really have the words to articulate how I felt in so much of my journey. And on top of that, I just felt like I had to portray myself as somebody who didn't struggle with these things. And that was really hard, but I'm ready to share it. And I'm sharing this because I think it will help a lot of women who are going through the same thing. And my hope is that even if you haven't been through it, you will maybe be able to see yourself in parts of my story and it will make you feel less alone. And so I'm about to share what I experienced along the way and what I've learned. As a background, I played soccer my whole life. I was never the fastest, never the fittest. I was actually one of the most out of shape people on my team, so much so that I had to change club teams because my coach stopped playing me because I was always last in fitness tests. I ended up tearing my meniscus, having to get surgery, and came out of that even more out of shape. Fast forward to high school, I was playing in a game, and I remember this so vividly. I was on my period. I'm running back and forth in my game, and all of a sudden, I just stop running. Hands on my knees, bent over in so much pain, the worst cramps. And my coach thought I was out of shape, which I was, but I was actually bent over because I was in so much pain from my period. So he pulled me off the field, and that was the only field time I saw that day. Didn't go back in the game. I never even told him I was on my period because that was just something we didn't talk about at that time. But after the game, we had a team meeting, and my coach called me out in front of the team. And this was the most pivotal moment of my life to this day. And it's been over 15 years. My coach said, "Julia, if you continue to do what you're doing," and he was referring to my lack of fitness, he said, "your soccer career is going to be done." And that crushed me. Soccer was my whole life. All I wanted to do was get a scholarship to play. And here my coach was telling me as a 14-year-old girl, my soccer career is done because I'm so out of shape. And that made me question everything. I was like, okay, well, like, should I just give up? Like, maybe I'm not good enough. I'm never going to be good enough to compete in college. I'm never going to be able to get in shape to play at that level. Like, all these things went through my mind. And I remember going back into the hotel room because we were at an away tournament and sitting on the bed, just like crying. And I made a promise to myself that night. I was like, I'm not giving up. And I am going to spend every single day in the gym working on my fitness. And that's exactly what I did. What also happened at this time was I got on birth control because my doctor said it will fix your painful periods. And so at that point, I was like, yep, give it to me. I'm willing to do anything and everything to not have to deal with that pain or embarrassment ever again. And so I got on birth control and started spending every day after school going to the gym. And here's where my journey started. So 14-year-old Julia would go to school. After school, she'd go run to the YMCA, which was about a mile away, and I would work on my fitness. I had no idea what I was doing at the time, and whatever I did worked, and it happened so quickly over the course of like a few months, and I felt the difference. I felt so much more confident in myself on the field. My performance increased. I got praise from my coaches, like, wow, like, you did such a great job. You're so in shape now. I started playing more. I got faster. I got stronger. During this time, I even started to pay attention to what I was eating. I'd get like recommendations from my coaches to eat high protein or low fat, or make sure I like drink chocolate milk after trainings. And so I remember like going to the YMCA, doing my workout, going to the vending machine and like picking out my chocolate milk that was highest in protein and lowest in fat. And my focus just became obsessed with improving my performance to reach my goal of playing soccer in college. My junior year of high school, I ended up getting a full ride scholarship to play soccer at the University of Arizona. And before you go to college, what happens is the strength and conditioning coach in college gives incoming freshmen a program to follow, and it has weights, it has conditioning, and it essentially preps you for the physical demands of college. Because once you get to college, you go right into like double days, which are very, very challenging and demanding on the body. And so I was the person who took the program my strength coach gave me and I followed it to a T. I made zero excuses. I was like, this is on the agenda for today. I am getting it done. But I wanted to make sure I was so in shape that I also added in my own workout. So I would do workouts in my bedroom in the morning before school. I'd go to school. After school, I would go to the gym to do my program. If I didn't do my program, I would go to soccer practice. And sometimes I would do all three: work out in the morning, do my program after school, and then go to soccer practice. Fast forward, I get to college. I am top 5 in the fitness test as a freshman, starting games as a freshman, which is very hard to do. And again, this was just reassuring me that my hard work that I put in was paying off. And so when I got to college, I studied nutrition and physiology. And as a college athlete, your schedule is very demanding as is. It's like wake up at 6 a.m., go to weights, go to all your classes, go to practice, do homework, eat dinner, shower, go to bed, repeat. A lot of your day is just like back to back to back. But like if there was any gaps, I would go in the weight room and either lift more or do more conditioning. My attention to detail for my performance in the weight room, on the field, then started trickling over to my nutrition as well. I just remember being very meticulous with what I was eating because I only wanted to eat foods that would support my performance. My lens was still like carbs and protein, low in fat, and everything was going great until it wasn't. I was 20 years old, it was junior year, and I got off birth control. Don't exactly know why I went off, but I stopped it. And this was when I realized my period was no longer there. What happens on birth control is that you get a withdrawal bleed. So this masks any symptoms I may have had of a missing period prior to that time when I got off. I don't know if my period went missing before I turned 20. All I know is once I got off birth control, it was gone. I had never been talked to about periods. Like, it was just something that happened to women every month. And that was the extent I knew. And so I didn't think anything of it. I never brought it up that it didn't come back. It was just like, oh, whoops, like there goes. It was kind of nice not to have it. What happened next, though, was really when things took a turn south. So I got off birth control. I didn't get my period back. I then started to experience these weird symptoms. One, I started to get acne for the first time. I had never had that before, but even worse, I started to have insomnia. I would get a racing heart at night. I would have hot flashes and night sweats in the middle of the night. Like I would have to change shirts in the middle of the night because I was drenched in sweat. I also started to get brain fog, and I also started to like zone out in games. And this had never ever happened before. I just felt like I wasn't present and wasn't able to focus. And not only did I experience those symptoms, but my performance started to decrease too. My times got worse in conditioning, the reaction time felt slower. And this was when I was like, okay, now I'm concerned because this is all I cared about. I pushed off the other symptoms. I was like, oh, this is just the way I am, whatever. I'll get my period back eventually. But my performance is decreasing. Like, this is a problem. I remember feeling just like totally exhausted too, which is on par for the course as an athlete, but it just felt like more exhaustion than I had ever experienced before. I didn't have the words to describe what I was feeling, but I just knew something was happening. And so I went to my athletic trainer and I was like, I feel off. Like my times are not improving. Like I feel so tired. And He sent me to a doctor. The doctor brushed it off as, this is athletics. This is normal as an athlete. Like, go see the sports psychologist. And I was like, sports psychologist? Like, I am feeling tired. And I was just like, what? And so I never saw the sports psychologist. The doctor brushed off my symptoms. So I was like, okay, this might just be the way I am. But I also thought maybe I just need to work harder. Maybe I'm just being soft. And soft was a word used in our weight room because our culture very much valued hard work. We would end up on the floor after every hard conditioning session. We had people throw up and pee their pants. And I'm laughing now because it does make for a good story, but like, this is how brutal these workouts were. If we weren't completely exhausted after the workout, we didn't work hard enough. And this mindset stuck with me for years. I thought this was normal. I thought you're supposed to feel this exhausted after workouts because if you're not improving. Anyway, fast forward through senior year, I kept training like a Division I soccer player, even though I was done. And in hindsight, I was definitely not eating enough to meet the energy demands of my workouts. And then the stressors of life on top of that hit me. Ended up getting my first job out of college as a strength and conditioning coach. Got back on birth control because I got in a relationship, even though I hadn't got my period back. So at this point, it'd been like a year and a half, 2 years, no period, no signs of a period. And I remember just feeling off at this time, but I just ignored the symptoms and kept on pushing through. After this, I ended up going back to grad school to get my master's degree in nutritional science because I wanted to become a registered dietitian. In grad school, I started learning about intermittent fasting and fasted workouts and low carb. And so I still had the mindset of like, I want to improve my performance. I heard fasting and low carb can help with mental clarity. Let me just add on all of the things. And so I did. Then I got a pregnancy scare. What happened was I stopped getting my withdrawal bleed on birth control. I was so nervous. I took pregnancy tests. I was just like, what is happening? And so I ended up stopping birth control. And this was when I was 24 because I was like, okay, well, I'm not even getting a withdrawal bleed on it. There's no point of even taking it. And so I stopped birth control then. And my symptoms just got exponentially worse. My hair started to fall out. My eyebrows started to thin. I remember I would be in the shower, like washing my face, and I would have like clumps of eyebrow and eyelashes just falling out. I would brush my hair and clumps of hair would fall out. I would feel so exhausted during the day, and I would only feel good when I was in a fasted state. So I'd even push that fasted window back even more because as soon as I ate, brain fog kicked in, digestive issues kicked in. What was most concerning for me at that time was the brain fog. I remember just being like zoning out when people were talking to me, disengaging in conversations. I would read these textbooks and not be able to retain anything. And I just almost like began to think I was stupid. I was like, okay, maybe like I'm not cut out for this. Like, this shouldn't be so hard to like retain things. I would still have the hot flashes and night sweats at night. And then I started to get this like underlying anxiety that I had all of the time. I felt so overwhelmed constantly. Felt like I was always in a rush, even if I didn't have anywhere to be. And I just felt so off. And oh, I get cry. It makes me so sad to think that like I didn't even know this was a thing or like what was happening. I literally just thought like, this is me. And I was like, this can't be what I feel like every day. And so just like the doctor said, like, oh, this is normal. I was like, okay, this is normal. Let me just push through. And I just continued to push through. Because what also happened around this time is I decided to start a side hustle, which is now my full-time business, but I started to create online programs and talk about another stressor. So going to grad school, doing homework, research papers, I was still training hard and then working on my quote unquote business. That was my life for, 2.5, 3 years. And so I got my master's degree. I passed my exam to become a registered dietitian. Here I am. I am 26 years old and still no period. And I am now starting to see one-on-one clients working on their nutrition habits. I'm trying to build a business, and I just felt like I didn't have time for my own health. I just felt like I'll deal with this later. And then I just remember reaching a certain point of like, okay, I need to get this sorted out. Like all of these symptoms are just, they keep getting worse. They're not going away. And I still don't have my period. And I remember my mom saying, like, you should like look into this. This is not normal. And I was like, it's fine. I'll get it back. I'll just add in more fat. And so I added in more fat. That didn't work. But what I did at that time as well was investigate in doctors. So I went to my first doctor. That was a wash, not helpful at all. Went to an OB. She handed me the birth control pill. Didn't want to take that. She handed me the Progestin challenge, which was essentially you take a pill to elicit a bleed. But when I did my like ultrasound scan, there was no endometrium lining to bleed. It was very, very, very thin. And when I got my hormones tested, they were in postmenopausal range. I had essentially zero estrogen and progesterone. They were just very, very, very low. At that point, I was like, okay, I don't really know what to do at this time. Let me investigate like functional medicine because I had heard it from someone or in a podcast I would listen to or something like that. And I invested the money that I didn't really have into these functional medicine doctors and nutritionists, and we ran certain tests, and it just confirmed I had like nutrient deficiencies, some gut issues, low estrogen, progesterone. Then what happened was I got my thyroid tested, and then I found out I had Hashimoto's, and I was like, how am I 26 years old at this point and I am just learning now I have an autoimmune condition? Like this was never tested before on me. And so now I'm like, okay, is this the reason I don't have my period? Like, do I have another condition that I don't know about? Like, what is wrong with me? My body just felt broken. I was scared and I didn't know what to do. And so knowing my type A driven personality, I was like, I'm diving into women's hormones. Like something's off. Let me just like learn about periods. Let me learn other things that are going on. What are the root causes? And I just went down a rabbit hole. And when I want to learn something, I won't stop. And so it took me, I mean, hours and hours and hours and hours of research on women's hormones, what was going on in my body, what do these symptoms mean? I took my knowledge of like nutritional biochemistry that I had learned in grad school, and I just went down a rabbit hole. And what I had learned was I have hypothalamic amenorrhea, and it was never diagnosed, but I checked all the boxes. Amenorrhea is a missing period for over 3 months. At this point, my period was missing for 7 years. So check that box. Hypothalamic or functional hypothalamic amenorrhea is a diagnosis of exclusion, but really it happens from over exercising, under eating, and high stress. So it's a combination of these things without other diagnoses that would contribute to amenorrhea. And so then I went down the rabbit hole of like, okay, how do I fix this? And a lot of the things that I read was stop exercising and eat everything. And I just felt like those were such extremes. I was not going to stop exercising. Like I genuinely love to train. Was I training very intensely too often? 100% yes. And that part, like I mentioned earlier, took me a long time to stop doing. But the more I learned how negatively this was affecting my health, the more I started to shift my mindset of like, okay, to really take care of my health, I actually need to do things differently. Because when you have amenorrhea, when you don't have estrogen, you are affecting your heart health. You are at higher risk for cardiovascular disease, higher risk for osteoporosis. You affect your brain function, your brain health, like so many areas of your life are affected when you don't have your period. This is such a big problem that I had no idea about because nobody ever talked to me about why you should have your period. It was more like, here's birth control, or it's fine, you're an athlete, you'll get it back. Like, nobody told me, like, you need to change this right now because you are going to experience all of these negative consequences. And knowing what I know now and what I had learned through women's hormones, like, I went through like almost 8 years of menopausal symptoms, the hot flashes, the night sweats, the brain fog. And what happened around 27 is I started to randomly gain weight. And that had never happened to me before. I was always very lean, despite, looking a certain way on the outside. I felt like trash on the inside, but then I started to gain weight and I was like, this is so weird. Like, I don't know what's happening with my body. I don't recognize myself. I just felt like I was in a foreign body. And again, I still felt like I had no one to talk to at this time because I was just trying to synthesize what was happening to me. And so what happened after I saw the doctors, what happened after I started diving into the research, I then started to share what I was learning on social media, and I got so many responses from women like, me too, I'm feeling that too. Like, and even when I would work with clients one-on-one, I would hear them talk to me about their symptoms. And honestly, like, it was so healing to me. And my clients don't even know how much they helped me personally because it made me feel less alone. I had just spent the last 7 years feeling like my body was broken. And then I learned about hormone imbalance symptoms, but then I heard other women were actually experiencing these too. And it just made me feel less alone, but also made me feel like I need to speak up about this. Like, this needs to be talked about. Women should not feel like their body is broken because there is something you can do. And the more I learned, the more I started to change my own habits. So 27 through 29, I started to dabble in changing my habits. I definitely stopped intermittent fasting and doing fasted workouts. But I was still training intensely and still probably not eating as much as I should. And I'm saying this as if it happened like that. These habits were so hard to change because they were ingrained in my head for so many years. And changing habits is hard, but I had to take it very, very, very slow. So slow that when I started incorporating breakfast, I would eat one Brazil nut, just one nut, just to train my body like, okay, breakfast time is this time. And I started to incorporate more and more food. And I started to really work on my mindset around this. Like, I have full faith that it's going to come back. Like, I trust my body. I'm doing the right things now. I reduced my exercise intensity. I'm eating more. I'm managing like the mindset piece of it, which is very important in any healing journey. I addressed my thyroid. I taught myself, more about autoimmune conditions and how to support my body through that. I taught myself what supplements to take. I remember making my own appointments to go get ultrasound scans just to make sure like nothing was wrong structurally or anything like that. And then 27, 28, 29, still no period. And at this point, like, not a day has gone by where I haven't thought about getting my period back. Like, from 26, I thought about it every single day. And once I turned 29, something in me shifted. I was like, okay, I'm about to be 30. I want to be able to have the choice to have kids one day. I don't want them now, but like right now, that's not an option for me. Like, and that made me very scared and upset. And I was like, okay, I thought to myself, I want to adopt the mindset of what would I do right now if I was trying to conceive? What would that Julia do? Not what would Division I soccer player athlete do, but what would the Julia do who wants to have a baby right now and work on fertility? And it was not what I was doing at that time. So from 29, I was like, I am going to take my advice because oftentimes We are our own worst patients. That's why it's so important to have outside help. And I am someone who's just not good at asking for help. I'm much better now, but I was just like, I'll do it myself. And this is talk about trauma, but like I have always had that mindset of like, I'll figure it out on my own. And so that's what I did. I was like, I have learned all this stuff. I've helped so many other women improve their symptoms. I can do this. And so from 29, I devoted all of my efforts into trying to get my period back. But I didn't want to give up exercise completely. I know our body is so much smarter than that. And I knew I was able to heal if I actually just like moderated the dose and intensity of my exercise and fueled appropriately. With my background as a dietitian and strength coach, I was able to structure my workouts accordingly, and I knew that would be possible. And so I wanted to prove to myself that I was able to do this. And I started to feel changes from 29 to 30. Brain function got better. Like I really started to feel better. It was just my period didn't come back. And I think with any type of condition or any type of like diagnosis you have, you almost like wear it as your identity. And I was just like trying so hard to get out of that mindset. And so I really started to lean into the faith I had in my body to heal. And I remember one specific day, it was actually Valentine's Day. And I had a couple friends over and I had one drop of blood. And it was the faintest light pink color, but I was like, oh my goodness, something's happening. Oh my gosh, it's here. And I was so excited. Nothing after that. And I was like, okay, dang it. That was just like a fluke, but like maybe something's happening. And I remember like a few months later, I got another drop of blood and I was like, okay, this is it. It's back. And then nothing after that. And so I just started to feel so defeated of like, okay, maybe this isn't happening. Like, I just need to stop thinking about it because I would literally think about it every day. So come 30, we've got nothing. Nothing's happening. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like, what am I doing wrong? Like, what is happening to my body to where it's so screwed up? Like, am I okay? And it really made me feel so concerned of, is this just going to be the way it is? Like, what's going to happen to my future if like I'm really not able to have kids? What does that look like for me, you know? And then fast forward a couple months later, I remember waking up multiple days in a row, elevated body temperature, elevated heart rate. I track my sleep with an Oura ring, and I was like, either I'm getting sick or this is happening. And I remember like seeing and feeling the physical signs of like your period coming back. And mind you, I had like taught myself and was very well versed at this point of women's hormones, periods, how to best support your body throughout your cycle. Like I had been learning this stuff for the past 4 years, like diving deep into like teaching myself about this. And so I knew every single sign that was coming up. And I was like, this is so cool if I'm like actually seeing this happen in real life. And what do you know? I woke up one morning, September 23rd, and I got my period after 10 years. And it was a perfect, beautiful, luscious, perfect period. Minor cramps, so easy, perfect blood flow. And I was floored. I was so happy. I texted my friends. They were so happy for me. Like they were just like my hype women. And I've gotten my period every single month since then. And I feel the best I have ever felt in my life. And I'm sharing this story because if I can recover my period after 10 years, I am so sure the female body is capable of magic. We are so incredible and we are innately designed to heal as long as we give our body the right environment to heal in. And this is what I help women do now. And I want every woman to know that I don't want you to accept the way you're feeling if it's not the way you want to feel. If you're experiencing these symptoms, listen to your body. Because for so long, I was taught push harder, ignore when you're tired, push through, ignore your symptoms. And that mindset carried with me for far too long to where it started to impact my actual health. Don't ignore the signs your body is trying to tell you, because it is trying to send you gentle nudges to pay attention to something. And the longer you wait, the longer you ignore the signals, the worse it can be for your health long term. I feel like it is so important for women to understand their bodies. It's so important for professionals who work with women, especially younger athletes, to talk about periods. They should be talked about. It should not be taboo. It is a marker of your health. And there are so many negative consequences that can happen when you do not get your period, especially for consecutive years on end. It is not normal and it needs to be addressed. And so my goal and intention is really just to get the knowledge and education into every woman's hands, because we deserve to know how our body works. And we were never taught this in school. Okay, if you made it this far, I'm an open book if you have any questions. And thank you so much for listening.